Try this. Try this. Try this. Sorry about that. Oh, wanted to make sure that I can get the audio working. It's giving me some trouble this morning. I can get the audio working. It's giving me some trouble this morning. Looks like it's working, but not the audio from the mic. It's giving me some trouble this morning. Looks like it's working, but not the audio from. Interesting. Let's see if we can get some music working off the system. Okay, good. System audio is working. Okay, good. System audio is working. And let me check if this mic is working at all. System audio is working. Take the mic out. Let me check if this mic is working at all. System audio is working. Take the mic out. Let me check if this mic is working at all. System audio is working. Okay, so it doesn't look like it's actually using my microphone today. Okay, so it doesn't look like it's actually using my microphone today. Okay, so it doesn't look like it's actually. Alright, you'd think having done this about 50 plus times there would be no more technical difficulties, but okay, looks like audio is working and looks like system audio is working as well. Play some track. Play some track. Sweet. Alright, so hey everyone, this is Aiman. Thanks for joining the stream today. Okay, so I'm on this Restream, which allows me to see your chat messages from Twitch, YouTube, Facebook. So any questions or comments that you have, drop them in there. I'll have this window open off to the side. Playing some music off of Pretzel This is an open source audio player. Excuse me. If at any point the music's too loud, let me know and I'll turn it down. I'm going to start with it off and then we'll turn it back up later. So let's start with the usual spiel. My name is Aiman Akhtar. I'm a 3D artist in Los Angeles, and I've been doing a lot of character sculpting, been doing a lot of 3D printing, and so I like to do this stream with ZBrush called 3D Printing Ideas to Reality. So you can see more about my work at aiman3d.com. There's a bunch of different 3D print stuff there under sculpture. So you can check all that stuff out. My latest project is right here. It's called Fungusaurs, little dinosaur mushroom hybrids, and we're making our own IP. My wife and I are developing a cartoon pitch. We're making toys and games at the same time. You can follow that project at fungusaurs.com or Instagram at fungusaurs. You can see all the photos we take of the toys. These are the 3D printed prototypes that we take with us everywhere we go. And now we did a Kickstarter and have a whole toy line. And developing an augmented reality mobile game. Let's give this a sec to see if Sketchfab will cooperate. You may have noticed I'm at a new time. I'm here on Friday throughout November. That's because ZBrush 2020 is coming out, and Pixelogic has some big announcements to make on Thursdays. You can see the Fungusaurs coming to life. It's been really fun developing this project over the past couple of years. Lots of people have helped out. But yeah, you can follow that at Fungusaurs on Instagram. Like I said, I'm on Restream, so I can see everyone's chats. Let's see. Grim Reaper, did I catch Paul's demo of ZBrush 2020's new features yesterday? I did not. I'm going to try to catch up on it. But Paul did his yesterday. I think Joseph Drust is doing one next week, and then there's another one next Thursday after that. So I'm excited to see all the new features of ZBrush 2020 coming up. Let me make this window a tad smaller. Some of these features, actually a lot of these features, we already were exposed to back at the ZBrush Summit. So the extractor brush, the history recall brush, ZBrushing on Morph UV, infinite depth, and then to me there's a couple of really fun ones. There's the PolyPaint adjust by color, which really lets you change your polypainting on the go, which is really powerful. And then for 3D printing, wall thickness visualizer. This is huge, as well as draft analysis. Draft basically lets you see from different angles how much your model is splaying in and out. So draft analysis is pretty dope. Got cam view on here, and I'm sure there'll be even more features. But you can see more about that. Just type ZBrush 2020 on Google, and it'll bring up the ZBrush 2020 ZBrush Central site. And yeah, I'm excited to start playing with it. I was supposed to be on the beta team, but the season is so super busy, expo season as they call it. So I'm not going to be betaing, but I'm excited to see what all the beta testers are coming up with. Mauricio on Facebook, hey, thanks for joining. All right, if you want to see all the awesome Pixelogic presentations, you can go to Pixelogic ZBrush Live Presenters and scroll down, and you can see mine are all here, the past broadcasts and schedules. I wonder if Paul's are over here. Here we go, Paul Gabry. Now, that's more of a did you know live. It's not, here's the ZBrush Summit development, and that's Comic-Con. So I think when they posted the 2020 streams, they'll post them somewhere else. But if you're interested in seeing mine, you can scroll down to there. And here's all the different projects that I've made on stream. It was Halloween over the past month, so I was making a few different masks and cowls. Some more Fungusaurus development. I've got one of my lead characters for the animated cartoon I'm pitching. Showed how I went about slicing keying that up. Some articulation and IMM brush stuff. I released this brush on Gumroad, so y'all can check that out. I'll drop that link actually. This is the keys and articulation ZBrush IMM brush, and you get the écorché to play around with. I've started getting emails from a lot of people sending examples of what they've been doing with the brush, so I'm really psyched that it's working well for people. Brush. There we go. I spelled brush wrong. Of course I did. Here we go. If y'all want to check that out. Hello, hello, hello. All right, great. Looks like we're going live on Twitch, Facebook, Restream, no problem, so we can keep moving forward. All right, that looks good. That looks good. Sweet. All right, usually I get asked the same question every stream, since I talk a lot about 3D printing, which 3D printers I have. So I'm going to take a second to make this window really large and point the camera over. Sorry to give anyone seizures. But that's my main FDM printer. It's a Raise 3D N2 Plus, so it is a 12-inch by 12-inch by 24-inch build volume FDM printer. So I really like that for printing big stuff relatively cheap. And then behind it, you see those two orange tops. Those are my Formlabs Form 2 printers. So those are resin printers that can print relatively high quality SLA printing. So those are my printers. This is the Fungusaurus office, as you can see here at Fonco Studios in Los Angeles. And Formlabs just released a new Form 3 printer, so you can check that out. It looks pretty dope, and the test prints and samples they've given me of it so far look amazing. I still haven't gotten a Form 3 yet. I'm deciding whether or not I want to hold off to get the Form 3L. That is way, way, way larger, and it's exciting. And I don't, not backed by any 3D printing companies. I just recommend Formlabs because I've had good experiences with them, and they tend to be very good and around for support. When you're starting 3D printing, you're going to need support. Things go wrong. You need some forums. You need someone to say, hey, what's wrong with this? And they're pretty good at that. There has been a real boom recently in SLA printing. I think a lot of the patents are expiring, so there's been a lot of new SLA printers on the market. And I haven't tried this myself yet, but I've been recommended the Frozen Transform, which is a pretty big printer as well. That's spelled P-H-R-O-Z-E-N, Frozen. And then there's the Peopoly printers. So Peopoly had the Moai, I think was the name, and then now they've got the Phenom, which is their third generation printer, I think, which is, you know, it's priced a lot lower. It's $2,000 and you get a pretty big build volume. So those are the two that I have heard good things about if you're in the market of a big SLA printer. The other ones that I've been hearing a lot of great things about is the Anycubic Photon, which is a really small, really cheap SLA printer. Actually, DLP. It's based on a projection. So that is one that a lot of people have been recommending to me as well. I haven't tried it yet personally, but everyone says great things. So check the Restream chat. Cool. All right. And lastly, last bit of self-promotion. I've got a class that I teach online, 3D printing for ZBrush artists on Mold 3D Academy. So if you're interested, you get 8 weeks worth of lessons. Pretty much everything I know about 3D printing condensed into one class. There is 3D printing for large-scale, small-scale miniatures, jewelries, fashion, wearables, keying, slicing, articulation. So all that's there, and I'll post that link in the chat as well, and then we'll get started. Okay, so what are we doing today? I was planning to do a little display. So if you take a look at this image, and I'll pop open some other images so you can really see what I'm talking about. This is the display for Fungusaurus toys at different expos. We do Lightbox, CTN, Designer Con, Jackalope, we've done Toy Fair, a few other big expos and small expos. So generally at expos, you want something eye-catching. You want something to bring the audience uh, into your booth really quickly. And this is what we've been using for this past year. It's a little table with I don't know how to describe this. This is kind of, I guess, a terrarium or an aquarium piece that I picked up from Petco or PetSmart. I don't remember which one. But it works really well for Fungusaurs because you can display the different toys at different areas. And so I kind of wanted to build something around this to, maybe add a sign, maybe add more wood paneling, something to make it feel more complete, not just put together, but like actually intentional. And hopefully it'll draw more of the crowd. We have a really great spot at DesignerCon this year. So I'm going to start prepping this stuff. Let's see, my downloads folder. I've got a few more images. Okay, here we go. All right, so basically this is the display. It's a little 3-pronged table, which is a half sphere, I guess a semicircle, half sphere, half cylinder. It's a semicircle, basically table, and it's got a lot of space underneath because to lift everything up to bring it up more closer to view for people. And what we want to do is DesignerCon may not be ready by November, but by February, by Toy Fair, we're hoping to have the first prototype of our game and a little commercial cut to show the stuff. So I want to have an iPad that goes right there too. Another view of the little semicircle table. And then I was thinking we could just put the iPad right down in front. Now my challenge is trying to come up with a solution that blends all of this stuff together. So what I'm going to do first is let's open this with Photoshop. I may already have it open. And let me pull Restream up and have that on my other window. Okay, so before you make anything, it's always a good idea to plan, and Photoshop is great for planning. So what I'm going to do is kind of quickly just mock up different ideas of what I want to happen. I think I actually may have a logo as well. Let me grab all of that. Actually, let me switch to different thing. There we go. Delete that. Delete that. And delete that. There we go. All right. I'm going to drag and drop from Illustrator into Photoshop, see if it works. There we go. Here's the Fungusaur's logo. And the idea that I've got is to make it feel a little bit more woody. And I'll show you some more reference as well for what I have in mind and what inspired me to decide to make something like this today. Actually, it's a good idea. Cover all of that. So all you see is the little screen. Basically integrating the screen into the display here. I can pick some colors from here for the wood. And let's see if we want to extend it around the back. I'm not really sure how yet, but I try to play with a few different items here. and gonna switch over to a item mask. I don't know if you guys have used these before in Photoshop. You just click on the little button to item mask stuff, and you can just paint black to hide and white to add, and it's really powerful. Okay. Switch back to my item mask, switch to white maybe this time, and try to reveal a little bit of that. So even though this is planning stage, I want to kind of get a sense of what I'm making. So better to start in 2D first. Okay, I think that gets the point across. Basically creating some sort of woody terrain that can kind of create a block to have all this stuff sitting together. I may also have the stuff in the front come up a little bit higher. So it blocks the edge of that table, so you don't really see the table. Create a little bit of unevenness there. Overall, it'll feel very organic if done well and done together. I don't really know how to make it look more like wood, short of adding all sorts of various cracks and elements. Let's see here. You can start doing that there. And the fungusaur sign, I'm still not sure how I want to do this, but I kind of want it to glow. And neon is very unstable. It's notoriously unstable. So I don't really know if I want to use neon to make this sign. But I might be able to use some sort of LED kind of thing in order to get it to work. There we go. Some of these cracks will have to run all the way through because I can't really print that wide. So I'll need to print this in multiple pieces. But this is the stage to kind of experiment before even getting into ZBrush for me to decide what the heck I'm making. I am Groot. I always think of Groot whenever I'm making any kind of woody stuff. Alright, so this way we can have the iPad in the front, and that'll kind of just be playing like the toy commercial or the app commercial, whatever. And then we'll have the toys up on top on display. This will be a big print. This will be a lot of pieces kind of coming together. And I need to create in a sort of modular way so it can be taken apart and then also rebuilt somewhere new. Go with some non-saturated colors as well. Alright, so that kind of gets the idea across. Now I have no idea how I'm going to make this Fungusaur sign glow. Let's see if we can try to do some effect in Photoshop to first get a sense of it. This looks like it's still a vector object, so first thing I'll have to do is duplicate it and merge it down so it's on a flat layer. And then let's do inner glow, see what that does. Kind of. Let's have it, instead of be from the edge, be in the center. Increase the opacity. Let's see, instead of being white, can we make it just a bit brighter orange? Alright, so something like that, basically. So that's kind of the plan, and now we'll try to start putting it together and figuring out how to make this happen. Alright, got a few more questions on Restream, so checking it out. Rebukins87 is saying, what about having some artificial grass on the table? That's a great idea. The idea is to basically have orange and green. Those are our two main colors for the brand. So having some sort of grass on the table would really help sell that illusion. I think we need more brighter green elements in general. Just thinking about like various stuff we could put on or around there. Maybe something down here on front of the screen. Maybe something on the back. I don't know. Might be overkill. And another thing actually we could do, since we can, I mean, this is 3D printing, I can create anything I want. I could create some sort of stump, basically something that sticks out as a ledge here. That we could put stuff on. Trying to do this in 3D, but first, a little bit of 2D. Actually, we could have that ledge look a little bit like a mushroom as well. And we could do a few of these different ledges to actually pop into place in various parts of this display, I guess, and we could have different Fungusaurs be displayed on those as well. So it'll be thinking about the future. Right now we've got 8 characters, but we might have 16 soon, so it's good to plan this kind of stuff ahead. A few more questions on the Restream. We've got from YouTube, Life Size Doll saying, what do you think about the Creality 3D printer? I've heard nothing but good things. Creality is very cheap alternatives. If you get the printer, I think you may have to build it yourself. I'm not sure about that, but it's basically from the generation of like post MakerBot printers, where a lot of startups got their hands on these on the patents and were able to kind of come up with their own way of doing FDM, and it looks like it's a good alternative. It seems pretty cheap too, right? It's like 150, 200 bucks. So actually, yeah, try it out and let me know how it goes. I'm curious. All right, let's see what else. Alex Dunlop on YouTube is saying, is Sculptress Pro going to exist in ZBrush 2020? That is a good question. I think so. I see no reason why they would remove Sculptress Pro because it already exists now. ZBrush is more about adding features, not removing them. So I'm sure it will. Attentive Slug is giving another suggestion here. How about having a character card with Fungusaurus on the step? So yeah, that's a good idea. We usually put the cards on the table, like a little, you know, play cards or something like that. But you're right, we could have little displays about the characters or about the toys or signs about how much the toys cost, stuff like that. But I don't need to mock that up because that's something we can just drop into place. I can think about the different types of steps, though, that we would create. There's this thing called the artist fungus, which is like the perfect step to put something on as a toy. And it's a mushroom, so it kind of, you know, really doubles down on what we're doing. So something like that may be a good step to drop on there. Organic elements, basically, more organic elements. See, there's the bottom of it, and then the top of it looks a bit more like that. Fitting. It's called the artist fungus. All right, so basically I think that's enough planning because we get the idea of how to do it. Now we need to start building these elements so we can pull it off. So let's start actually in Maya. Oh, this is cool. If you guys are interested, I can show you how the animations are coming along. This is animated by animator here in Burbank, Henrique Saucedo. And I just dig it. It's kind of like a super move for this one character. It'll like come forward and smack you with its tail and then go back into place. This is going to be an augmented reality app, so it has to work on a mobile phone just like directly in front. So I just gave him some feedback to speed up the tail, maybe have the back legs kind of be pulled up to one side or another off the tail and have the mouth open up a little bit. And yeah, excited to see it all coming together. Very low poly characters, you can see. I retopologized a lot of this in ZBrush actually before I brought it in here to Maya and Moto for UVs. It's a pretty all over the place workflow. All right, so I'm going to start in Maya just because I know when I export stuff from, when I build stuff directly in ZBrush, sometimes it isn't properly scaled. So I tend to first, you know, mock up something in ZBrush, in Maya. So I'm going to go to my settings preferences, make sure that my settings are set for my scale. Centimeter is the default, I think. I might have to try this a couple of times, but let's try centimeters, see how it works. So the first thing to do is create a little semicircle table. We'll create a cylinder and go to the top view and let's delete half of it. Whoa. Okay. And we'll scale it down. So I need to go measure the table to actually see what the measurements are. I don't think it's a complete semicircle. I think it's like a little bit pulled in. So that feels about right. And we can go to these and see about bridging them. Bridge, there we go. Maybe don't need that. All right. Test to see if it's working, kind of, sorta. It's not really properly merged here along the edges. Or maybe there's something going on the inside. Nope. Not sure why it's doing this weird thing here. But you know, it doesn't matter because we're not really going to sub D it. We'll probably just dynamesh it what's in ZBrush to give us the base of what we're going for. So give me a second. I'm going to be right back. I need to measure my base and see what the actual dimensions of it are. So I'll be right back. And meanwhile, I'll play some music for you guys. And let's open ZBrush as well. Okay, so the measurement done really quickly in my ruler with inches is 23.5 wide by 12 deep, 12 inches deep, and 7 inches tall. So I'm going to do some quick conversions of this to centimeters and then try to build it in Maya, bring it to ZBrush, and then we're off to the races. Might have to do a little bit more measuring, but we'll come back to it. Okay, so I'll play the music back up as I do some calculating. Alright, I'm going to have to do one more measurement for how tall my actual display is going to be. So I'll be right back. Alright, so I've got all the measurements I need now, and I'm going to basically just mock these up in Maya, bring it into ZBrush, do a little back and forth export to make sure the scale's right, and I'll check it in one of my 3D printing software, and then we'll be off to the races sculpting till noon. Oh, I've been doing it wrong. Give me a second. 60 centimeters wide. So need to get the largest axis right first. 60 centimeters. That's about 58. There we go. 60. Maybe a little bit smaller. Okay, a little bit smaller. Alright, 60 and then 30 wide. There we go. Okay, small. Okay, and then 18 centimeters high. Alright, there we go. Alright, so STL export was giving me some trouble, so I switched to OBJ. I need to figure out a little bit more of scale, but got some questions on Restream, so I wanted to answer those. MayKXX38 on Twitch is asking, what am I making? So let me explain that again. So basically, this is a base in Maya for what I have in mind. I'm making a display for my Fungusaur's expos. The idea is to have an iPad in the front, like a bunch of woody, like front, and then a woody back with a sign, like a display sign saying Fungusaur's above the toys. So a little ledge for the toys to be on. Let me hide all this stuff so you can see it. So that's basically the current setup. I've got a table, like a three-pronged table, and the iPad. So what I want to do is kind of incorporate it all and make it feel like one succinct thing. So hopefully that makes sense to you, May. Okay. Mikhail Nezgul on the YouTube saying same thing. What am I making? That's what I'm making. The idea is to come up with a little display for expos and conventions that we go to. So basically go from here to here. So now that we've mocked it up in Photoshop, we're in Maya to try to get a base scale set up for this table and this display, and we'll go from there. All right. I mean, that's the thing about 3D printing is you have to kind of engineer as you go along. You can't just have fun sculpting. You have to kind of know what you're sculpting first. So yeah, I'll turn the music up again, do a little bit more measuring, and then we should be good to start. That was my plan, to start sculpting around 11, and I've got 5 more minutes, 6 more minutes, so yeah. All right, so I've got Idea Maker open here. This is the 3D print prep software for my Raise 3D N2 Plus. And this is kind of what I use to just do a quick scale check, because I know that this scale, this is about 12 inch by 12 inch by 24 inch build volume. So this is what I meant about this will take multiple panels to print it all together and assemble. Likely what I'll do is I'll just make wood panels like for all the way along the sides that attach onto the table. And then this is about how tall the display is. So any sign that I make would have to go above that display. So now that we've got the scale figured out in ZBrush, now we're ready to actually start sculpting, because I know back in ZBrush, if I export it out with these settings, then that's accurate to the settings in Maya. It's set to millimeters, not centimeters, so 60 went to 600, but that's basically it. And this is my workflow. You don't have to do it this way. It's just easy for me to take like 5-10 minutes to figure out the scale, bring it from Maya to ZBrush, and then start. Depending on the project, sometimes I don't really care about the scale. I'll just sculpt something, proportionally and then scale only upon export. So now that we've got the scales settings figured out, now I can get cracking on this. So I'll call this Fungusaur's display. Actually, you know what? No. I'm going to leave this column base scale, and I'll append a sphere, and I throw that up all the way up on the top. And when I save my tool, it'll rename that sphere, not all the subtools to come. So call this Fungusaur's display 1. All right. And I usually turn that sphere off in my tool palette, so I don't really even need to deal with it. All right, so now that we've got the scales figured out and we know what's happening where, we can start creating the wood paneling that we want to. So I might duplicate this mesh, do a little bit of a cleaning up, delete hidden, and I'll start the wood paneling right on here. So I'll go to my geometry, Dynamesh all of it. I might also go to deformation, inflate, tapping inflate 5 times or so, and Dynameshing again. So now that gives me a good base for that wood. Maybe I will. Now, you know what? I'm not even going to worry about the engineering of it yet. I'm only going to focus on the sculpt and then come back to the engineering. So at this resolution, and I want to create a bunch of wood panels here for the front, it's 25,000 polys. That's not really enough to sculpt a lot, but we can get started. It's good to sculpt at a relatively low resolution until you get going. And so I'll have Restream open for any questions. Just keep asking them. It just takes me a few minutes to get to it. And let's go. I'm going to switch to my damn standard brush, turn the music up a little bit again, and let's sculpt. Hopefully y'all can sculpt along on some fun ZBrush projects of your own. Interesting track. Let's skip to the next one. Okay. Changing this size and scale of my brush. I'm doing it pretty haphazardly to start. The main thing I'm trying to make sure of is that there's no symmetry in my strokes. Symmetry and in the organic is just going to kill it. It's not going to feel organic anymore. Alright, that gives me a good start to my wood. We need to cut out a hole right there for the iPad. So I need to measure how much space that iPad's actually going to need. And you know what, before I do that, I need to figure out, am I tilting it forward so the iPad can also be tilted forward? That makes sense to me. And the design of this may change. I'm just kind of feeling this kind of wooden log thing right now, but might change my mind later. Reserve the right to change my mind. Creating some unevenness up at the top here. Carry that organic feel up into the silhouette. Dynamesh again. Too low of a resolution, so I'll crank it up. There we go. It's feeling right. So bottom's going to stay relatively flat, so I can kind of flatten that out. The top can be all sorts of different shapes. The more organic, the better. Primarily just using the move brush and the damn standard so far. Haven't really used anything else. Alright, good start. We can even switch to a wood-ish matte cap so we can get an idea. That one looks like it's all up in the wrong direction. Now, all of these are designed to be more, I guess, in this direction. What the heck, it doesn't change anything here for me. I could try to rotate it all. Or I could change the projection of the way this material projects. Let's see. Let's see if it's obvious. Nah, it's not that obvious. Well, it gets the point across. When I'm sculpting, I tend to sculpt with a simple material like Sculpey anyway. But matte caps can be good for visualization. All right, great. So let's keep at this. Next thing I'm going to do is turn those panels into panels. So I'll duplicate this base. Let's see only that. maybe make this a bit taller. And we'll use that as a cutter. Mess with a few more things here. Inflate this up a little bit. Move it forward a little bit. We don't really care about the back too much. Smooth this out. Maybe do a little bit of inflate. And let's turn on our render booleans and make this a cutter. So there we go. We've got a sense of our wood paneling for the front. And we need to create a space for that iPad to kind of go in over here. All right, so there's our table. We're not going to be blocking our table at all. We're not blocking our display at all. Yeah, this looks good. In a safe scene. And now let's think about the wooden backdrop as well as the sign. Let me figure out the iPad first, so let me measure the iPad. I'll be right back again. A lot of measuring. Alright, there's two measurements that I need to do for this. First, I need to measure the iPad, the full length of the iPad, so we can stick it in place. Then I need to measure just the black screen, so we can put that in place. So, yeah. I don't know how much of that you heard, because the music's probably really loud. Okay, so done with the measurements for the iPad. This is the previous generation iPad, so it's not too massive. But I also have to calculate how deep it's going to be and the tilt. So I need to know all this stuff before I build in the display. Otherwise, it'll only be able to tilt a little bit or not tilt at all or tilt too far back. So all this stuff needs to be measured before I can get this to work in place properly. The important thing is we know that it needs to be done. That's all. So I need to make sure that this distance from here to here is about 7.5 centimeters deep. And you know what? The best way to do it is to just build a basic iPad tilted like this in Maya. And I don't really need to worry about that just yet. We can stick in ZBrush to do the ZBrush stream. We just know that there will need to be at some point an iPad going through there. To represent that though, what I can do is append a cube, scale it down a bit, tad more, shrink it down about that way, move it into place, and we can set that to be another cutter. Transparency mode off, there we go. So ultimately, that's what it'll kind of look like when we have the iPad station set up in the front. And so we need to make some decisions still. Do we want, let's see, duplicate that just in case. Do we want the iPad to appear flat? And if it does, then we need to pull all this stuff back. So slightly less organic of a shape, which we can try to round out along the edges. But these are the kind of things we need to consider when we're going to be making an object that will exist in the real world. Everything needs to be engineered. Window a bit smaller, put some music back on. Okay, so that is the idea of what's going to go in the back as well. So we can do some quick texturing on there. I'm going to go to my damn standard brush and with symmetry off, just kind of draw some lines. And change the size of my brush and do the same thing. Make sure those lines aren't parallel at all. Throw in some weird ones. Do kind of like a smooth pass. And again. We can also use some of the alphas that are in ZBrush to help this process along. If you go to the standard brush, navigate over to Alpha 58, that one's really great at creating the illusion of cracks. So I'm going to go to Z sub and just add a few of those cracks in place. You can also not do drag rectangle, do something color spray-y, and then it'll really get a lot of texture in there. Which may or may not be what we want, but we can see. I can even do a pass like that on the front. Not enough resolution here, so I'm going to divide. Just adding a bit of texture here and there. All right, so now we need to add the sign up in the back for the actual Fungusaur's letters. And I'm pretty sure a lot of this will keep changing as I figure out this idea a bit better. I may even want some kind of like bowing out here. We'll see. Too Game of Thronesy. Let's see about just adding some text. So if we go back to Photoshop and turn on our group there, that's basically the idea of where we're trying to build a display stand with a lot of elements. So we're not really going to finish it today, but it's showing you my process of how I go about starting something that it's going to be digital and 3D printed from my idea to a reality. So here's the idea. And Fungusaur's text up at the top here, it looks like it's pretty not rounded, looks like it's pretty not arched, I guess. So let's make sure that in ZBrush I'm representing it properly. It'll be something like that. And we need to now take this logo and see how we can turn it into an alpha that we can bring into ZBrush, maybe even as a model directly. So I'm going to open up a new Photoshop file. We can make it kind of big. Let's make it, I don't know, 20 inches by 20 inches. All right. Then in Illustrator, I've got the Fungusaur's logo here, and I'm going to drag and drop that from Illustrator to Photoshop. That's one good thing about Adobe products is you can drag and drop from one to the other. And let's do that. Let's maybe duplicate it and merge it down so it's flattened. We can also try to desaturate it. And first things first, I just kind of want a silhouette. Go to the levels, crank all the way down to black. Okay, so that's basically the logo. May or may not arch it more later, but let's say if we stick with this, what can we do? So the background is on its own layer. It's separate. And this image is on its own layer. So in Photoshop, we could make this 3D. So let's try that first, bring it in, just use it for some measurements. So I'm going to go to 3D, new 3D layer, or let's see, new 3D extrusion from selected layer. So I'm going to click on that. Photoshop's going to think a bit. Asking me to switch to a 3D workspace. And here we go. There's the extruded Fungosaurus 3D layer. I don't need it to be that extruded. We can be just a little bit, about that much. It feels right. And we can use this for placement and then figure out how exactly we're going to pull this off. So one thing I've got to do now is go to File, I think Export. I believe you can do it right here. While I've got that selected, or maybe it's in 3D. Yeah, Export 3D layer. And we can choose a different type of file. So let's try just wavefront OBJ first. Don't really care about the dimensions. I'll have to scale it up in Photoshop. So let's click OK. Drop it inside Desktop. Fungosaurus display. Logo export 1. Now let's go to ZBrush. We'll go to my simple brush. Go to Import. Logo export 1. And bring that in. So if you haven't used this workflow, it's pretty powerful because you can take stuff out of Vector into Photoshop and into ZBrush relatively quickly. Now I don't really care that this doesn't have that much resolution because I'm not actually using this. This is just for placement. So let's click on my display. We'll append that in there. Navigate over to it. So there it is right there. Now let's move it on up. And let's bring it into place so we can see how it's looking. A little bit of weird angling going on, but that's fine by me. Since we're, like I said, just using this for a little bit of placement, and we don't even know what we're doing with it just yet. Okay. I'm going to try to flatten out the back of this a little bit as well. Okay. So there we go. That's basically where the Fungosaurus sign is going to live. Somehow keyed onto place on that wooden background. Now this is cool because this gives me plenty of space above the display, and I could even theoretically bring in some lighting elements up from the back or some electricity to light that up. No idea how I'm going to do it yet, but there's the basics of the idea. So let's color that up, see if we can find a way to make it glow a bit. Mm-hmm. 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 Turn on perspective mode. Duplicate that logo. Maybe Dynamesh it as well. More resolution than that. So you may be noticing when I Dynamesh the logo, a lot of it gets filled in. That's not fun. So what we want to do is go to Modify Topology, and we want to weld points. We want to weld the points before we do any Dynameshing of Photoshop imported assets. So let's click Weld Points, and then let's try Dynameshing again. There we go. So simple fix, just got to remember to do that. Remember to weld points, because when Photoshop exports out of 3D, here, let's take a look if we zoom into this a bit. How do I zoom in? So in Photoshop 3D, all of the front and the sides and the backs, all of it is separate meshes. You can even see here how it's not lining up perfectly. So you need to weld points before it'll work. See, we may actually want the logo to glow green if everything else is so woody. Nah, too green. So a lot more stuff to do, a lot more ideas to play with, but this is basically what I'm going to try to build and see if it's possible to build it by this Designer Con. If not by Designer Con, maybe by Toy Fair in February, because this will be a lot of parts that need to get sliced apart and panels that need to be keyed together, and I need to figure out how this lighting is going to go. Grim Reaper saying center the gizmo. Joanne Raguda saying texture the returns. Yeah, a lot of stuff will be needing to be textured. Since this is like a visualization stage for me, I kind of want to just figure out, a few more elements. So I'm going to maybe start with a insert primitive of a sphere. Navigate over to my panel there. Draw that on. It's not going to work if there's multiple subdivisions, so I'll delete that subdivision. Maybe even have this brush depth go a bit deeper. And let's try to create some of those ledges like we were talking about. So I've got that. I'm going to go to my clip curve brush. Just clip the top. And we can subtool split unmask points. So we have that ledge, little artist fungus ledge on its own. And that might be cool to sculpt as its own thing. And we may add a few more of those, maybe one up here, a couple more. We'll see. Alright, so I'm digging that. Let me duplicate it and move it around. Let's make some more. We can just try a few different positions to see if we like these. Adding a bit of personality to each of these ledges is going to help differentiate them and make them feel more organic. So I don't even know if we want this many of them, but maybe. I can also clip the backgrounds off. It's feeling pretty good. Save the scene. Alright, so on Twitch we've got Erratic Watcher saying, will you be 3D printing this whole thing? So maybe, I mean the idea is to 3D print as little as possible and make it modular. So what I mean by that is, let's see, that's what I'll be 3D printing. The edges and the backdrop. So I don't actually have to print a whole lot of volume. I can just print the surface because it's all about creating the look and it doesn't really need to need to be complete. Even this stuff, I'm gonna probably find a way to part it. So likely this will need to be done in panels. So I'll do something like this, where that'll be one panel, and then this one, a bit tight. Let's see, maybe over there will be panel number 2. So 1, 2, this will be like 3. The center panels will be their own thing. There we go. So it'll be 1, 2, 3. I don't even know if this will all print in one go, but 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 pieces for just the wood in the front. So that's how you have to think about when you're doing 3D printing, and I can really kind of help that sink in. Let's do some coloring. Let's see, those guys, it's making some other color so we can understand that they're their own thing. Yeah, Z-Clay works. With my standard brush selected, just MRGB, and let's see, let's pick the same material. I can start doing some coloring. And this will help me think about it in terms of how many pieces I'll actually be printing. Yeah, not different enough. So there you go. That gives you an idea of how many panels will be printed just for the front of the wooden display. And then the back will be the same thing. I'll need to figure out how to slice and key it up into multiple panels because it's too big to print in one go. I may be able to epoxy the back together and just kind of keep it at the bottom of a suitcase, but the front panels will need to be modular, meaning they'll need to be keyed to fit into each other and not stay assembled all the time. So lots more to figure out on this project. I think we had a good run today, just trying to running through it. Let's see. Some more questions on here. Grim Reaper saying, well, the back plate could just be a piece of painted cardboard. It could be, but I also want to figure out if there's a way for me to run some sort of electrical up here, some plug or lighting, and then have it go through the sign, and have the sign actually be lit up in some way, like a faux neon, like a LED wire running through the whole thing. So I need to figure out how to make that happen. All right, got some more questions. Got Erratic Watcher saying, for an X-game developer looking to get into 3D printed characters, what's a great 3D printer? Really depends on what you're going for. Hold on one second. I can give you some recommendations shortly. All right, there we go. I guess the idea across for our display. Okay, so the printers that I always recommend because I know them firsthand. I've got the Raise 3D N2 Plus. That's great for, large scale character work. So that 12-inch by 12-inch by 24-inch build volume is the Raise 3D N2 Plus, and there's the Form 2s that I have. Those are great for stereolithography, resin-based character work. That's what I do on my toy prototyping in. And so if you want to do it for characters, I recommend getting a stereolithography printer, the Form 2s, the Form 3s, and there's also these new ones out right now, the Frozen Transform, which is about $2,000, so you're going to save $1,500 off of Form 2 or Form 3, but the company is still relatively unproven and new. Same with the Peopoly, I don't know. Cheaper SLA printer, pretty big build volume. This is their 3rd generation, so it might be more reliable. I haven't tested it myself yet. If you're looking really small and you want to do miniatures, then you can get the Anycubic Photon, relatively cheap printer that'll be good to get into for, just getting into characters without investing too much money. And yeah, of course, there's the Form 3 and then the Raise 3D N2 Plus. That's the one I have. So it's basically just a big printer. So you get the idea of scale. You can do big FDM prints for relatively cheap. Like that whole thing, I'm guessing was probably $25, $30 to print, and that's the size of a big dog. So yeah, that's my recommendations. I'm going to keep sculpting on this stuff, the display. So if you tune into my stream next week, I'll show you an update, depending on how far I've had a chance to get along. If you want to follow my work, you can follow it at Aiman Akhtar 3D on Instagram. We've got a lot of my stuff, portfolio on aiman3d.com. My latest project, like I said, is Fungusaurs, little dinosaur mushroom hybrids. That's what we're making the display for. And so you can follow that stuff, the AR game, the animation pitch, the toys, at Fungusaurs on Instagram. Slicing keying, if you're interested in supporting me and getting this brush, it'll give you everything you need to get into slicing and keying and articulation in ZBrush. That is on Gumroad Keys Art. I'll drop that in Restream. Where is it? Keys, articulation, brush. And then if you're interested in learning from me, I teach a class, 3D printing for ZBrush artists, online on Mold 3D Academy. It's self-paced, so you can take your own time, but for $200, you'll learn everything I know about 3D printing. Small scale to large scale, wearables, articulation. So I'll drop that link in the chat as well. All right. So that's it for my stream today, everyone. Thank you for joining. I'm going to, like I said, keep at it, and so should you. Think about what you can make that doesn't exist yet, and then find a way to make it a reality. All right, that's it for my stream today. Signing off. Thanks for joining. See you next time. Cheers.